Céad Míle Fáilte, welcome back to Clancy's Kitchen, the podcast. So we're doing something a little different today. We're doing a series of short film clips, which we've started in Carrick and Suir already. Ryland, you might fill us in a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, we started a Patreon campaign, and for people who don't know what a Patreon campaign is, it's creating a community of support, really. This is our 10th episode. Yeah. So some people have started following us and subscribing to Patreon. And what Patreon is for people who want to give a bit every month to support us, they will then get some what they call bonus material. Mm. And we started thinking, what could we do for people to get interested and something special. So we started producing a few short films. So they'll be coming out on a monthly basis. And at the beginning, it's a short film about Carrick, and you're talking about your growing up there.
Yeah.
And then that will go on to go inside the Clancy brothers' house, because not many people have seen inside the house in William Street.
Yeah.
And seen some of the instruments and some of the pictures on the wall, and to get a feel of where the Clancys grew up. So if you can support us, it means that we can make more podcasts, and we're very grateful to those who are supporting us already. So hopefully in time then, every month there'll be something small. There might be a little special song that comes out from time to time as we progress.
Yeah, lovely. So as you said there, Ryland, we started one in Carrick on Suir, which of course is where the Clancy brothers hail from. And we open up with overlooking the town of Carrick on Suir. And it's very special to me as well, because, of course, I grew up in the Clancy brother household in Carrick on Suir. So it's kind of a trip down memory lane for me a little bit as well. But we're looking at the atmosphere, the environment, the influences, all of that, and the town of Carrick itself. We have a little clip, actually, do we? Can we show?
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, the onus is on you, really. It's your personal experience growing up in Carrick and in the household. So it's been born during the time of that explosion and being immersed in that culture. So these are little short films where you get your perspective. And we will show a little clip. I think we'll show a little clip, if I can get it here, of when you talk about your grandmother. And I didn't know this when she had
my great-grandmother.
Great-grandmother.
Mama Gra, yeah.
I'll get this clip up now.
Yeah, quite a magical place to grow up in. So on the main street in Carrick on Suir, my great-grandmother, Mama Gra, had a pub. And people would come from around Ireland. This is about the 1930s, thereabouts. And it was a very poor place in Ireland at that time. The travelling labourers would call into the pub, and they'd work in farms in and around. Of course, this is the Golden Vale, so lots of places to work in and around, farms to work on. And they'd bring with them their songs, the Sculpin Fánach as they were known, but they'd bring their songs with them in Irish and English. And I'm sure that might have started a lot of the tradition in the Clancy family as well, of singing and the collection of songs, both in Irish and English.
So that was that. It's very interesting, and a bit of Go Lassie Go at the end, for good measure.
Yeah. And you know what? I really did feel overlooking the town there. As you're coming into the town, you can see the church on the street where we grew up, on William Street. And of course, it was the same house that my father and, 11? There was 11 of them born into that house.
Mad, isn't it?
and it was a tiny little terraced house. Of course, years later, after we took it over, we eventually bought the house next door and made it into one kind of half-decent house. But even there was 4 of us kids. I can't imagine what it was like to have 11 kids in that house.
But it was part of the culture to have big families back then.
Big Catholic families.
And, you know, although there were smaller, seemingly, families in Wales, there were examples of big families then. I think the family unit was, I wouldn't say more important, but big families were just part of life, weren't they?
Yeah, but you couldn't compare with Catholic families now in Wales. There was absolutely not a chance. And I remember my father telling us that as kids they slept on the 3rd floor in what they call the garret, is what they called it. We'd say the attic. And I remember him saying in winter it was so cold. They could see on the slates of the roof, they'd make out patterns in the ice of, oh, look, there's like the map of Ireland or whatever. I mean, it was actually freezing. They didn't have heat other than a fire, you know.
And we seldom see that anymore.
No.
Because I remember growing up, you know, the ice sort of collecting, and the next day there'd be more ice in the winter around the window frame. And then central heating came and double glazing, and you seldom had that.
I know.
You know?
I remember saying to someone the other day, as a kids, we used to, did you pretend to smoke fags? Did you do that? We used to pretend to go,
oh, yeah.
And because it was cold enough, the condensation in the air made it look like you were smoking.
But you used to get those sweets as well.
Yes.
Do you remember the cigarettes? We loved them. And there was a little candy or whatever, sweets, and one end had a little...
It had a little red tip on it to show where it was lit.
You felt like the big man walking down the road, and you were only 5 years old or whatever, you know?
Well, my father used to bring back... That's one of my earliest memories, growing up in William Street, because, of course, he was away touring a lot of the time. And when he came back, he'd bring back... these like oversized lollipops, you know, these huge multicoloured lollipops that you'd sort of...
Get in the fairground.
Yeah, exactly. But you wouldn't get them much in Ireland, you know.
No, I know. It's a very American thing.
Really American. Yeah. All these kind of treats, things that you couldn't get in Ireland. I remember another time he brought back, was it called Angel Dust? Something
I remember
like that.
Yeah,
but you would have remembered it way after we had it.
Oh, you got it.
We had it originally.
Angel Dust.
1970s or thereabouts.
We got it in
no,
the 80s.
Somebody will correct me now. Could have been the 80s. It could have been. But I know we had it first because I remember bringing it into school and my friends trying it out and the nuns giving out and saying, "What have you got there?" Or it would kind of pop, it would explode in your mouth a little bit, wouldn't it? It was like this kind of popping candy sort of thing.
So these are the little things, I suppose, we like to focus on rather than the conventional story of the Clancys. It's about your impression of the town and, you know, even songs that you've heard and the songs you still sing today. Yeah, so... To remind everyone, if you want to support us, what you do is you go on this website called Patreon, Patreon, / Clancy's Kitchen, which is one word, lowercase. And if you give something then every month, you can access these little films and all the bonus material, little snippets and new songs and all kinds of stuff.
All the special stuff.
The stuff we'll be doing on a monthly basis into the future. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah.
So
it's the songs and...
maybe a poem or all kinds of stuff. Maybe even new songs. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. Okay, so when you were growing up then, there were some songs, I suppose, that were there, were they?
Yeah, I mean... You know, we were talking there about, you know, my father, Bobby'd go off on tour, and I suppose our upbringing was different to my cousins who grew up in the States, you know. And we had, so Paddy, my uncle, lived just outside of Carrick, and we lived in the old family homestead, as I said, in William Street. And Paddy had a farm, and I used to go out there sometimes as a child. So we had a very, I suppose, strict Catholic education upbringing, so it was two different worlds, you know. And as kids we had that world, and we had Carrick on Suir, and then in the summertime all the cousins would come back from America, and you know, it was lovely. It was wild kind of days of being on the beach, and there was always music in the background. Even from the time actually I was really young, my earliest memories is my father singing to us things like, oh, she didn't dance, she didn't dance at all today, and lifting us up in the air and all that. So there was always music, there was always people calling in. And I remember another time actually, Ted Fury, Fimber Fury's father, came, and he had a big white beard and tattoos. And I remember thinking, actually drawing a picture in school of Santa Claus and having tattoos on him, and you know, the nuns saying, no, that's not what Santa Claus looked like, because he told me I am Santa Claus. So it was really exciting, you know. As a child you had all of this kind of going on, and then of course in Ring in the summertime, all the music, the Irish traditional music and sean-nós music.
And I think that's you know, what we're trying to do with these little short films is, you know, given that the wrong phrase is behind the scenes, but from your perspective, so seeing the Fury's father coming in, is your impression of this quite famous man in traditional music who looked like Santa Claus but had tattoos. And it's exactly that what we're trying to discover, I suppose. You know, not just the story as you see in a book or hear in a radio program, but your impressions. Is that right, do you think?
Yeah. And then, you know, as we got a little bit older, you know, obviously we do the whole disco thing, but we also spent weekends going out to country pubs with my father outside of Carrick, and you know, we'd sing some from the Clancy brother repertoire, of course, but also, you know, the folk sort of artists of the day, you know, Day Dannon, Maura Brennan and Mary Black, and even across the seas, you know, of course, Bob Dylan thrown in there, McGarrigle sisters, all of that.
And that's interesting, actually, because we recently went to see Paul Brady in the Theatre Royal in Waterford. And I didn't realise, and I couldn't imagine that he was 77 years old at the time, and his whole career had spanned decades, right back, you know, he's talking about the 60s.
Yeah.
And here's a person that had this catalogue of songs that went from everything from traditional folk into modern folk and folk rock. And I started listening to his stuff again. But it's exactly that, where you have that songbook naturally, I think, in your lives, where you've seen the evolution of the Clancys, you said, Dannon, or that stage of Planksty,
yes, but you see,
Bothy Band,
but
Furies.
we didn't see it through the prism of the polished performance necessarily. You know, because we didn't see the Clancy brothers perform growing up. That was something that happened in America. I didn't go there till, well, as a child I did briefly, but as an adult, you know, I didn't actually see them perform until probably 92.
Yeah, so interesting, isn't it?
So to us, it was the sessions, you know, the sessions. You'd see people sing for the love of singing. So as I said, the country pubs with my father, where anyone and everyone who felt like singing or reciting a poem or doing a dance or whatever it was that you wanted to do, it was that form of expression and that sort of unpolished or unprofessional, if you like, environment where people just did things for the love of doing it.
But I think, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is an outsider's viewpoint on this. It's something that you probably took for granted. I know certain people who've walked into William Street or into your household have felt, oh, they don't know what they have. And I think it's a soundtrack to life that you just didn't even think was there.
Yeah.
It was just there.
Yeah.
In the same way people say the Beatles are the soundtrack of their lives growing up. And the actor John C. Reilly said the same about the Clancys, because that was the radio, the crackling radio, the constant songs in America and Chicago Irish America. And I think for people, even from a tradition of folk singing like I am in Wales, it isn't the same as you had these songs going on all the time. So it's in the background in your house, it's in the background in the pub, you know, all around you all the time. And I think coming back to the little films that we made, is those things that we're trying to pick up on. You know, the naturalism of tradition. That's how I look at it. And it's through the prism or through the eyes of someone like yourself who grew up just after an era and in your own era, and how those songs are again and remain important in a totally unassuming way. That's how I think.
Yeah. So should we sing a song?
Are there any songs that you know, maybe some of the songs we don't always hear?
A huge range of songs. But I suppose one family favourite, and maybe this is coming to mind because we had a picture of my parents. Is it there? It is. On their wedding day. I was looking at that earlier. My mother, Moira, they were coming down the road from the church. And as they were coming down the road, the church was on top of the hill. They were singing Mary's Wedding.
Oh, yeah.
So that came to mind. Should we give that a go? It's something we'd...
Yeah, something tells me that you and Aoife sang that on our wedding day.
Did we?
In the Park Hotel.
Oh. 1, 2, 3, and... Step we gaily, on we go, heel for heel and toe for toe, arm in arm and row, off for Mary's wedding. Over hillways, up and down, myrtle green and bracken brown, past the shilling through the town, all for the sake of Mary. Sing it with me. Step gaily, on we go, heel for heel and toe for toe, arm in arm and row, all for Mary's wedding. Plenty herring, plenty meal, plenty wheat to fill her creel, plenty burnt pans as well, that's the toast from Mary. Step we gaily, on we go, heel for heel and toe for toe, arm in arm and row, all for Mary's wedding. Over hillways, up and down, myrtle green and bracken brown, past the shilling through the town, all for the sake of Mary. Step we gaily, on we go, heel for heel and toe for toe, arm in arm and row, all for Mary's wedding. Cheeks as bright as Rowan's are, brighter far than any star, fairest of them all by far is our darling Mary. Step we gaily, on we go, heel for heel and toe for toe, arm in arm and row, all for Mary's wedding. Over hillways, up and down, myrtle green and bracken brown, past the shilling through the town, all for the sake of Mary. Woo! All for Mary's wedding.
There you go.
What we got there. Yeah.
Haven't heard that one for a while now.
No. Yeah, it's actually, it's not even I think that's an old English folk song.
Is it?
Yeah, don't tell anyone. The High Kings brought it out as well, didn't they?
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I think it was one of the first ones they brought out.
So these are the songs, I remember you doing them, but maybe we haven't done them for a while. And I thought you'd sung it at our wedding, but it was all, of course, there were two sisters side by side, and you and Aoife came on to the dance floor singing and dancing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were asking about songs there, and there was also the other side. There was the recitations and the drama, and as we've said a couple of times in Clancy's Kitchen, that the boys wanted to be actors, and that was the intention. And my Uncle Tom, as I grew up, and we'll have my cousins Blawny and Róisín, and maybe his wife Joan on the show, on the podcast to talk about this.
Yeah. But what's more pertinent, of course, they wanted to be actors, but you also had a burning desire to be an actor. You went to the American Academy of Dramatic Art.
I did indeed, yes. Yeah, I did loads of plays, loads of stage stuff, And I remember joining this Irish theatre company in Los Angeles, and they would do Ulysses, like excerpts from Ulysses every year. And I did the Molly Bloom piece, which of course we do in the shows sometimes.
Yeah.
And my father and Liam were touring at the time, and they ended up. I remember I'm sitting in this pub called Molly Malone's in downtown Los Angeles, and everyone dressed as the characters from Ulysses, and there was big queues around, the corner. But I was a nervous wreck. Here I was, sitting there all ready to go as Molly Bloom, and of course there's a lot of racy parts in it as well, and I was getting my head around all of this.
That might be one of the bonus material parts we do.
Yes, it might well be the X-rated version.
Racy parts, yeah.
But in the door comes my father and Liam, and I think they were touring in the area, and they had the night off or something. They were a little worse for wear coming in, and sat up at the corner of the bar as I was launching into my Molly Bloom soliloquy, But there was a load of recitations from poems, especially Yeats, that I would have heard from Tom, and also from Liam, and from my father, Bobby.
And being so lyrical, or having so many lyrical poems, Yeats was a real favourite of the family. Like Dylan Thomas was with his prose and poetry.
Yeah. You were saying the first time ever you were, not the first time ever you'd heard Dylan Thomas, but I think my father had a record of it. That you hadn't heard the voice of Dylan Thomas.
I'd never heard the voice of Dylan Thomas, or we say Dylan Thomas, right?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Until I came to Carrick. Years later, I'd be performing in Under Milk Wood, which was a joy, because the language for an actor is just, it's almost music.
Yeah.
It's musical anyway. And the way Dylan Thomas wrote and recited was very lyrical and singy-songy almost,
Yeah.
But I'd never heard Dylan Thomas's voice on a record, on an old 45, until I came to Carrick, because your father would play A Child's Christmas in Wales every year on Christmas morning. And I remember staying in Carrick for the first Christmas, and hearing that, and I was amazed, It's great though, that love was passed on, and yourself now, you recite a lot when we do the show live, as I do. And I think we both have that, recitations.
Go on, give us a taster. Give us the first little bit of Under Milk Wood.
Oh, gosh. See, I went to the piano there thinking I was going to...
Well, you could have that in the background.
Could do.
Yeah.
Yeah. To begin... At the beginning, it is spring moonless night in the small town, starless and Bible black. The cobble streets silent, and the hunched quarters and rabbit's wood, limping invisible down to the slow black, crow black, fishing boat bobbing sea. And that's just the very beginning.
Oh, God.
But, it's musical from
Tom
the start.
did that on Broadway, was it?
Yeah, and I think Tom played the seminal part of Captain Cat.
Oh, what a great part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's one of the great parts in Under Milk Wood.
Yeah.
But, you had recitations all around you. Your father, he'd be reciting or saying something.
I was looking up one here earlier.
Oh, right.
But in the Yeats book. Now, I don't know it off by heart, but it was one my father used to actually do a bit. That was nice, the music you did there. Do a bit of music behind this. Okay, let's sing. This is called When You Are Old by W.B. Yeats. When you are old and grey and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. Lovely, isn't it?
That is so beautiful.
Isn't it? That was nice. It was nice
with what that was there?
That was John of Dreams. yeah, very apt.
There's another one I remember your father singing. And it's mad, when we do these little pieces of poetry or prose in the show, we often find an air that goes with them.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of them were written that way.
No,
there's, John of Dreams that would come by listening to something like that, I think.
Yeah.
There's something subconscious we have, I suppose. Yeah.
And it's something we mentioned when we were looking at Carrick there the other week, how that was passed on through the spoken words, through the environment you lived in, the stories and the mythology of Slievenamon, the mountain over Carrick on Suir, and the castle, and all of these influences must have been all the stories that you've heard throughout generations that are passed on.
Yeah, and I think the operative word or words you just mentioned were passed on, something natural, rather than going, I'm going to study this. Or Rory Macomb said, when the brothers went to New York, they already had all this European literature and poetry and song, part of them to pass on.
Yes.
And, families like yourselves have been very fortunate to have that passed on to you, as I do in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking about Carrick there, but what we will cover in the short film clips as well is the influence of Ring and the Gaeltacht, which we've said many times before we now live in. And my mother's side of the family, the Moonies and Moonies Pub, and the sessions that were had there, and everyone who'd call in, the Dubliners and the Furies, and of course, Nicholas Tobin, the great Shannon singer from this area.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice actually to do a little something with a bit of piece of Gael get thrown in. Should we do?
Yeah. And nice. I think, with this bonus stuff, we'll be covering a lot of it in the podcasts as well. But there's so much, and we do want to open it out. And anyone who wants to write in, go on clancyskitchen.com and give us your impressions or your memories, and we can talk about that too in the podcast, because this is what it is. Yeah. It's a starting point in my mind.
Yes.
To other things. Yeah. We've had actors who have talked about the music that shaped their lives, or writers, and so it can go on from there.
And make requests.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the lovely thing, people associate songs with their family or family members going way back, or they might have a little bit of a song that they remember a line or two from. We'd love to hear from you with all of that and sing a song for you.
And Ring and Ryland here, where we live now, has a very special place in the Clancy story. Special place for you, especially because, you know, your mother and her sisters came from here and the pub.
Yeah.
So are there any songs you'd remember that would probably be a link almost between Ring and the Gaeltacht and the Clancys and Carrick?
Yeah, well, you know, I learnt a few of the Irish songs from my aunties, Breed and Anne, I suppose, especially. And I don't claim to be a great Irish speaker, but I've a great graw, as we say, for the Irish language. And I think it's really important to pass on that tradition that they passed on to me. So yeah, there's a song, we do it in the show. We haven't done it for a while now, but we do a few verses in Irish and a few verses in English. Buchalo Nairna, do you remember that one?
Lovely.
Come by the Hills. Should we give that a go?
Yes, why not?
Buchalo Nairna mes vrein fen kalim da soak ni hearing bo sprayle come and sever galore slum cockig the way they go have a lanas tiro smorana me peses me entire a conte vio Rach me mora kayanov lanov van kiel gan chute gan bod gan gran in brahe billam up the luna grave marei labas mokiao Sora jagt mannen der hus verchen tarren now. Come by the hills to the land where life is a song, and sing while the birds fill the air with their joy all day long. Trees sway in time, and even the white fields in tune, and the cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Come by the hills to the land where legends remain, where stories of old fill the hearts and may yet come again, where the past has been lost but the future has still to be won, and the cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done, and the cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Sinna will. Lovely. Gurv Mila Mahagwiv. Join us next time on Clancy's Kitchen. Take care.
Check us out on clancyskitchen.com or support us on patreon.com/Clancy's Kitchen.